Welcome to my channel, the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Why?
Rain came down like shrapnel on Adara's black cliffs, each drop exploding against stone with the violence of something alive. Alex Vale moved through fog thick enough to drown in, his boots slipping on moss that grew nowhere else in the known systems, bioluminescent, pulsing faint purple in the dark. The child in his arms weighed almost nothing, all trembling limbs and soft blue fur matted with mud and something darker. Blood, maybe. The kid's own or someone else's. Alex couldn't tell anymore. The boy's eyes flickered gold in the darkness, pupils blown wide with terror. His small chest heaved against Alex's tactical vest, heartbeat so fast it felt like holding a trapped bird. Alex kept moving, ignoring the burning in his thighs, the way his shoulder screamed where he dislocated it, pulling the kid from the ravine. Retired or not, his body remembered what emergency extraction felt like, what desperation tasted like. He'd been on Adara for 3 months, trying to disappear into a world that didn't want him, trying to forget what he'd done in the war, the orders he'd followed, the screaming that still woke him at 300 every morning. The colony administrators had been clear. Stay out of the interior. Don't interact with the natives. Don't interfere with local customs, no matter what you see. He'd found the boy in a hunting trap, leg broken, crying in a language Alex didn't speak but understood anyway. The universal grammar of pain. Some instinct older than thought had made him cut the rope, lift the child, run. Now that instinct felt like the stupidest thing he'd ever done. The mountain clearing opened before him like a mouth, circular and too perfect to be natural. Stone markers ringed the perimeter, carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. In the center, a figure waited, tall and still as the monoliths around her. Zandra. Alex had seen her twice before, always at a distance, always moving through the forest with the fluid grace of something that had never learned to doubt its place in the food chain. Midnight blue skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Eyes that tracked movement with predatory precision. She wore leather and bone, nothing that didn't serve a purpose, and carried herself like violence was a language she spoke fluently. She was the boy's mother. He'd figured that out from the way the kid had gasped her name through broken sobs, from the genetic markers any idiot could spot. The same sharp cheekbones, the same gold-flecked eyes. When she saw the child in his arms, everything about her changed. Her pupils narrowed into vertical slits, predator sharp, and her entire body went rigid. Not with relief, with something else. Something that made Alex's combat instincts scream warnings his conscious mind couldn't parse yet. She rushed forward, movements too fast to track properly, and snatched the boy from his arms with enough force to make Alex stagger. Her breath came out like a growl, low and subsonic, rattling in her chest. She held her son at arm's length, nose flaring as she drew in air, and her expression, Jesus Christ. It wasn't gratitude, it wasn't relief, it was horror. Your sense on him, idiot? Her voice came out rough, scraped raw, each word forced through clenched teeth. Now he smells like prey. The forest went silent, not gradually, not the natural settling of evening sounds. Every insect, every bird analog, every rustling thing in the undergrowth, all of it stopped at once, like someone had hit a mute button on the entire world. Then from somewhere in the fog-choked valleys below, a howl answered. Long, low, rising at the end into something that made Alex's hindbrain light up with fight-or-flight chemicals that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. It wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite mechanical. It was something that had learned to mimic both, something smart enough to use sound as a weapon. What? Alex started. Zandra's hand clamped over his mouth, claws pricking his skin hard enough to draw blood. She shook her head once, sharp and violent, then grabbed his arm and hauled him toward the tree line. The boy hung limp in her other arm, eyes glazed with shock. They moved fast through terrain that wanted to kill them, roots like tripwires, mud that sucked at boots, branches that hung low and wrong, positioned to catch throats. Alex had done jungle warfare on 3 worlds, and this was worse than all of them. This forest had teeth. The howl came again, closer now. Multiple voices this time, harmonizing in ways that shouldn't be possible without vocal cords designed by committee. And underneath it, a sound that took Alex too long to identify. Footfalls. Dozens of them. moving fast, moving toward them. Xandra dragged them into the ruins of what had once been an outpost. Human construction, pre-war, judging by the rust patterns and the way the walls had been grown rather than built, some kind of organic architecture that had died with its makers. The roof was half collapsed, letting in fingers of rain. The floor was covered in something that might have been carpet once, now reduced to bacterial slime. She shoved Alex against a wall and put the boy down in the corner, her movements precise despite the trembling in her hands. When she straightened, her claws were out, actual claws, extending from fingertips with a wet snick that made Alex's stomach turn. They gleamed in the faint light, razor sharp and slightly curved, designed for tearing. "Explain," Alex said, keeping his voice low. "Now." Xandra turned to face him, and for the first time he saw her properly, really saw her, the way her chest heaved, the way her pupils kept flickering between round and slitted, the way she held herself rigid, like she was fighting her own skeleton for control. She knelt beside the boy, wiping blood from his face with movements that were almost gentle. Almost. But her claws stayed out, and her jaw worked like she was chewing words before she could speak them. "My species," she said, each word careful and sharp, "evolved from pack predators, apex hunters. We survive by reading scent, tracking prey across continents, coordinating kills." She paused, drawing in a shaking breath. "Any being carrying a foreign scent triggers our hunting reflex. Any being." Alex stared at her. "You're telling me, even against kin?" She looked up at him, and her eyes were wrong, too bright, too focused, like she was seeing through him to something more interesting behind, especially against kin. It's biological, chemical, the smell of fear mixed with alien markers. It rewrites recognition protocols in our brains. Prey is prey. "You're saying you'd kill your own son?" Alex's voice came out flat, stripped of inflection. Combat voice. The voice he used when things had gone sideways and there was no room left for emotion. "Because I helped him." "Not me," she snarled, and the sound was inhuman enough to make him reach for the sidearm he wasn't carrying anymore. "All of us." Outside, answering shrieks cut through the rain. Closer now, close enough that Alex could hear the individual voices in the chorus, high and low, male and female, young and old. A whole clan, moving as one. The boy whimpered in the corner, curling into himself. Xandra's head snapped toward him, and Alex saw her pupils contract to pinpoints. Saw the way her lips pulled back from teeth that were too sharp, too numerous. Saw the exact moment when biology tried to override consciousness. She lunged and slammed herself against the opposite wall instead, claws tearing furrows in the ancient material. Her breath came in ragged gasps, shoulders shaking with the effort of holding still. "You need to understand," she forced out. "I'm fighting it right now. Fighting the urge to tear his throat open because he smells wrong. Because you made him smell wrong," she laughed, bitter and broken. "My own child. The only thing in this shit world I'd die for, and all I can think about is how the blood would taste." A shadow moved past the shattered window, too fast to see clearly, but enough to register the shape. Bipedal, tall, armed. One of them was already here. Alex grabbed a piece of rebar from the rubble and moved to the door, testing its weight. 15 pounds, maybe 20. Rust-eaten but solid enough to cave in a skull if he got the angle right. Not enough against what was coming, but better than nothing. Always better than nothing. "There's more than one way to do this," he said, keeping his eyes on the window. "We run. We find somewhere defensible. There's nowhere." Sandra's voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper, and that was somehow worse than the snarling. "They've caught the scent. They'll track us across the planet if they have to. That's what we do. That's what we are. Then we fight. You'll die. Probably." Alex shifted his grip on the rebar. "But I've done stupider shit for worse reasons." Sandra stared at him like he just proposed flying by flapping his arms. "Why?" "Because I found him in a trap and he was crying." Alex shrugged. "Because I'm tired of walking past people who need help. Because every time I close my eyes, I see all the times I followed orders instead of doing what was right. And I'm done with that. I'm done being the person who looks away." Something in her expression shifted. Not softening, nothing about Xandra would ever be soft, but recalibrating, like she was running calculations in real time, and the variables had changed. "The door won't hold," she said. "I know. And if they get inside, I can't promise I'll stay in control." "I know that too." She nodded once, sharp and military, and Alex realized with a jolt that she'd been a soldier once, same as him. Different army, different world, but the same bone-deep understanding of how to function when everything had gone to hell. "Then we make this count," she said, and moved to the door beside him. Alex started dragging debris, chunks of wall, pieces of furniture, anything with mass, and piling it against the entrance. Zandra worked faster, her strength casual and terrifying, lifting things that should have required machinery. Within minutes, they'd built a barricade that might buy them seconds, maybe a full minute if they were lucky. The boy watched from his corner, gold eyes tracking every movement. He'd stopped whimpering, gone silent in that way children do when the situation exceeds their capacity to process fear. Shock, probably. Alex had seen it before, in refugee camps and bombed-out cities. The 1,000-yard stare translated across species lines. "What's his name?" Alex asked, because if he was going to die defending this kid, he at least wanted to know that much. Sandra hesitated then. "Kyle." "Kyle," Alex repeated, committing it to memory. He looked at the boy. "Hey, Kyle, we're going to be okay." The kid's eyes flickered to him, then away. Not believing. Smart kid. Thunder rolled across the mountains, or something that sounded like thunder but moved wrong. Too rhythmic, too synchronized. Footfalls. Lots of them. Coming from every direction at once. Zandra moved to the center of the room, putting herself between the doors and her son. Her whole body was trembling now, muscles locked in constant tension. Alex could see the effort it cost her to stay still, to not turn and attack the source of the wrong smell that was triggering every instinct evolution had given her. "How long can you hold out?" he asked. "I don't know." Her voice was ragged. "Hours maybe, maybe less. If the blood smell gets stronger..." She cut herself off, jaw clenching. "You should go. Take him and run while I distract them." "Not happening." "I'm trying to save your life, you idiot." Noted and rejected. Alex checked his pockets. Field knife, half a protein bar, emergency beacon that wouldn't do shit out here. Not exactly an arsenal. "Got a better plan?" "Yes, you leave." "Already said no. Next plan." Zandra's laugh came out somewhere between humor and hysteria. "You're insane." "Yeah, well, retirement wasn't agreeing with me anyway." Outside, the sound stopped. Complete silence. More terrifying than any amount of noise. Alex's pulse hammered in his ears, counting seconds, waiting for the attack that had to be coming. That was always coming. That was the only logical next step in. Something hit the roof, not hard enough to break through, just hard enough to announce its presence. Then another impact, then another, spread out across the entire structure. They were on top of them, all around them, surrounding the building completely. Kel made a small sound, not quite a whimper, more like the squeak a mouse makes when the shadow of a hawk passes overhead. Zandra's head snapped toward him, and Alex saw her take a step before she caught herself. Saw the way her claws flexed, saw her bite down on her own lip hard enough to draw blood, using pain to anchor consciousness. "Talk to me," Alex said, low and urgent. "Keep your mind engaged. What do they want?" "To kill him." Her voice came out shredded. "To kill you. To purge the infection before it spreads." Infection? The foreign scent. In their minds, in my mind, it's a disease, a corruption of the pack. She squeezed her eyes shut. "They're right outside, waiting." "For what?" "For me to kill you both. Prove I'm still pack, still pure. And if you don't, they'll do it themselves and they'll make it slow." Alex thought about that, about clans and packs and the terrible logic of survival that evolution carved into nervous systems, about instincts so strong they could override love, could turn a mother into a killer, could reduce consciousness to chemistry. "There has to be a way to break the scent trigger," he said. "Some way to..." "There isn't." Zandra's eyes opened, and they were more slit-pupil than round now, more predator than person. "I've spent my whole life studying our biology, trying to find ways to override it. There's no hack, no workaround, just willpower, and that runs out. Everything runs out." Alex moved to the window, risking a look outside. Figures in the rain. Dozens of them, maybe 50. maybe more, hard to count when they moved like liquid shadow. All of them had Zandra's build, tall, powerful, perfectly designed for violence. All of them were watching the outpost with the infinite patience of apex predators who knew their prey was trapped. And in front, larger than the rest, armored in what looked like bone plates that had been grown rather than forged, the Alpha. Even from here, Alex could see the intelligence in those gold eyes. This wasn't a mindless beast. This was a tactician, a leader, someone who understood that the real threat wasn't the prey itself, but what it represented, the beginning of a crack in the pack's cohesion. "They're not attacking yet," Alex said. "Why?" "Protocol." Zandra had moved to the corner opposite Kale, putting maximum distance between herself and the source of the wrong smell. First, they give the infected pack member a chance to cleanse themselves, to prove loyalty. Then if that fails, she didn't finish, didn't need to. Alex pulled back from the window and made a decision. "We're going to survive this." "How?" "Don't know yet, but I didn't drag that kid out of a trap just to watch him die here." He looked at Zandra, really looked at her, at the way she held herself rigid, at the war being fought behind her eyes, at the sheer force of will it took to not give in to biology. "And you're not going to kill him. You're stronger than your programming. You don't understand what it's like." Her voice broke. "The smell is everywhere. In my nose, in my lungs, soaked into my brain. Every second, I have to choose not to attack. Every heartbeat, it's like..." She searched for words. "Like trying not to breathe. You can do it for a while, but eventually your body takes over. Eventually you break. Then we change the situation before that happens. There's always something." Alex started pacing, mind racing through tactical options. Barricade wouldn't hold. Couldn't fight them. Too many. Too strong. Couldn't negotiate. If Zandra was right about the biology, there was nothing to negotiate with. Running was impossible, which meant... His mind caught on something she'd said earlier. "You said the scent triggers the hunting reflex. Foreign markers mixed with fear. What about other scents?" "What? If the problem is my scent on him, what happens if we mask it? Cover it with something else?" Sandra stared at him. No, it doesn't work that way. The smell is already in his fur, his skin. It would take days to fully dissipate, and we don't have..." "What if we had a scent they recognize?" Alex pressed. "Something pack, something that overrides the prey marker. There's nothing that..." She stopped, went very still. "Blood." "What?" "Pack blood. If he's covered in clan scent, recent, fresh, it might confuse the recognition protocols. Might buy us time." Her eyes focused on Alex with sudden intensity. "Your idea has merit. But whose blood?" Alex looked down at his hands, at the scratches from where branches had caught him during the run, at the larger cut on his forearm where he'd sliced it open climbing into the ravine. Not much, but enough to work with. "Mine. That's the scent that's causing the problem in the first place. So we mix it, yours and mine together, make something new that doesn't register as pure prey or pure pack." Xander's expression shifted through calculation, doubt, desperate hope. "That's insane. It might work, or it might make things worse. Everything we do makes things worse. That's the nature of situations like this." Alex unsheathed his field knife. "Question is whether we try it or wait for your willpower to run out." She looked at Kale, then back at Alex. "If this doesn't work, then we were dead anyway. At least this way, we tried." For a long moment, Zandra didn't move. Then she nodded and extended her arm. Alex made the cut quick and clean, across the palm where blood flow was good. Zandra didn't flinch, just watched the blood well up with clinical interest. Then she moved to Kyle, and Alex saw the boy press himself harder against the wall, instinct recognizing danger even if his conscious mind couldn't articulate it. "It's okay," Zandra said, voice gentle despite the trembling. "I need to mark you, to keep you safe." Cal didn't respond, but he didn't pull away when she pressed her bleeding palm to his fur, smearing blood across his chest and shoulders. The kid's eyes squeezed shut, small hands balling into fists. "Now yours," Xander said, looking at Alex. He made the same cut on his own palm, hissing at the sting, then moved to add his blood to the mix. The moment his hand touched Kyle's fur, he saw Zandra's pupils dilate. saw the way her breathing changed, saw her take an involuntary step forward before she caught herself. "Hurry," she ground out through clenched teeth. Alex worked fast, mixing their blood into Kale's fur until the kid was marked with streaks of red and darker blue. The smell was copper and something else, something sharp and organic that Alex's human nose couldn't fully process. When he finished, he stepped back quickly, putting distance between himself and the child. Zandra drew in a long breath, nostrils flaring. Her pupils flickered, slit to round to slit again, and her expression went through rapid changes too quick to read. Confusion, recognition, something that might have been relief. "It's different," she said slowly. "Not prey, not pack, something between. Better or worse? I don't know. The urge to attack is..." She paused, testing her own reactions. "Less. Not gone, but less immediate, like the signal's been scrambled." "Good enough." Alex moved back to the window. Outside, the clan hadn't moved. Still waiting. Still watching. How long before they lose patience? Dawn, probably. Maybe sooner if... A howl cut her off, this one coming from directly above them. Long and rising, a signal that rippled through the entire clan. Then movement. Shadows dropping from the roof, landing in crouches that shouldn't be possible without shattered knees. More coming around the sides. The entire pack converging at once. "That's our answer," Zandra said. She moved to the center of the room, claws out, every muscle tensed for violence. "They're done waiting." Alex gripped his rebar with both hands and took position beside her. "Kyle, stay in the corner. Don't move. Don't make a sound." The kid nodded, eyes wide and gold and terrified. The first one hit the barricade like a missile, sending debris flying. Alex got a glimpse of midnight blue skin, gold eyes, teeth designed to bite through bone. Then another impact. Then another. The entire barricade coming apart under coordinated assault. Zandra launched herself forward, meeting the first attacker in midair. The impact was brutal. Bodies colliding with enough force to crack ribs. Claws finding flesh. Screams that were equal parts rage and recognition. She was fighting her own kind, her own clan, and doing it with the desperate fury of someone who knew exactly how much she was losing. Alex swung for the second attacker, rebar connecting with skull in a wet crunch. The hunter went down, but two more were already coming through the gap. He dodged left, felt claws rake across his shoulder, used the momentum to bring his weapon around in a wide arc that caught one of them in the knee. Bones broke. The hunter collapsed, howling, but there were too many, too fast, too strong. One of them got past his guard, slammed into him hard enough to knock the rebar from his hands. Alex hit the ground, rolled, came up with his field knife, and buried it in the hunter's throat. Blood sprayed, darker than human, thicker. The hunter made a gurgling sound and fell. Alex didn't have time to think about what he'd just done. Three more were coming through the door, moving with pack coordination that turned individual fighters into a single organism. They weren't trying to kill him quickly. They were hurting him, pushing him toward Kyle. They wanted him close to the boy, wanted the scent markers to strengthen, wanted to trigger Zandra's hunting reflex by putting prey and contamination in the same space. "Zandra!" Alex shouted, backing away from the corner. "They're using me as bait." But Zandra was buried under two hunters, claws flashing, blood flying. She'd torn one's throat out, but the other had her pinned, and more were coming through the door every second. The room was filling with bodies and violence and the smell of blood. Alex grabbed a piece of the broken barricade, a plank with nails sticking through it, and used it like a club. Swung wild, connected with something, kept moving, kept fighting, because the second he stopped was the second he died. One of them tackled him from the side. He went down hard, head cracking against stone, vision going gray at the edges. The hunter on top of him was female, younger than Zandra, and her eyes were completely predator now. No consciousness left, just instinct. Her claws went for his throat, a blur of midnight blue, and suddenly she was gone. Zandra had grabbed her by the skull and thrown her across the room hard enough to crack the wall. But the moment of distraction cost her. Two more hunters were on her instantly, and Alex watched her go down under their combined weight. He tried to get up, couldn't. His legs weren't working right. Too much adrenaline, too much damage, systems starting to shut down. More hunters poured through the door. 10, 15, 20, too many to count. The room was a mass of bodies and violence, and everything stopped. The hunters froze mid-attack, heads turning toward the entrance in perfect synchronization. Xandra went still beneath them. Even the dying stopped making noise. The Alpha stepped through the door. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall, bone armor grown directly from his skeleton in plates and spikes that made him look like evolution's rough draft of a tank. His eyes were pure gold, no pupils at all, and when he looked at Alex, it felt like being weighed on scales designed to measure worth in tooth and claw. The Alpha spoke, voice like grinding stone. Alex didn't understand the language, but he understood the tone. Command, judgment, finality. The other hunters backed away, forming a circle. Xandra tried to stand and was immediately pinned again, not violently, just firmly, held in place to watch. The Alpha moved toward Cal's corner with the slow precision of someone who had all the time in the world. Each step was measured, inevitable. The boy pressed himself against the wall, small body shaking, and the Alpha stopped 3 feet away and drew in a long breath through flared nostrils. Then he smiled. It was the worst thing Alex had ever seen. A predator's smile, all teeth and anticipation. The child reeks of the outsider, the Alpha said, and Alex realized with a jolt that he was speaking standard colony dialect. This wasn't some primitive savage. This was someone who understood exactly what he was doing. Purge the infection. He started forward, and Xandra tore free from her captors with strength that shouldn't be possible. She moved faster than thought, putting herself between the Alpha and her son. Claws out, teeth bared, every line of her body screaming defiance. The Alpha stopped, tilted his head. "You challenge? He's my son." Her voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Mine to protect. He's contaminated. He smells of prey, of weakness, of..." The Alpha's nose wrinkled. "Human. He smells of survival." Sandra's pupils were round now, fully conscious, fully present. "I marked him myself. Mixed scent. He's neither prey nor weakness. He's adaptation." "Adaptation!" The Alpha tasted the word like poison. "You've spent too much time with the humans. Their words, their ideas. Their weakness has infected you too. Their weakness saved my son's life." She gestured at Alex without looking away from the Alpha. "That human ran into a trap zone, risked his life, carried a child he'd never met to safety. How is that weakness? Because it violates pack law, because it threatens our purity, because..." The Alpha leaned forward, voice dropping. "It makes us question who we are. Maybe we should." The other hunters stirred, uneasy. This was heresy, Alex realized. This was the kind of thing that started revolutions or got you killed, depending on which way the wind blew. The Alpha's expression darkened. "You've made your choice then. You stand with prey, with contamination, with everything we've spent 10,000 years evolving beyond. I stand with my son." Xandra's claws flexed. "And if you want him, you go through me." "So be it." The Alpha moved like lightning, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Xandra met him halfway, and when they collided, it was with the sound of apocalypse. Bone armor cracking, claws tearing, screams that were rage and pain and terrible recognition. They were equally matched, Alpha's size and armor against Xandra's speed and fury. But he was fresh and she'd been fighting for minutes, burning through stamina and willpower, holding back instincts that wanted to betray her. Alex watched the Alpha's claws find her ribs, watched blood spray, watched Xandra stumble, and forced his body to move. He didn't think about it. Thinking was for people who had time, who had options, who weren't watching someone die for trying to protect their child. He just grabbed the burning torch that had fallen from a wall bracket during the fighting, hauled himself upright through sheer force of spite, and charged. The Alpha saw him coming and swatted him aside almost casually. Alex flew, hit a wall, felt something in his chest crack. The torch spun away, landing in a pile of old debris that immediately started smoldering. But the distraction was enough. Xandra used the opening to drive her claws into the Alpha's throat just above the bone armor. Not deep enough to kill, the armor extended too far, but deep enough to make him choke, to make him stagger. She pressed her advantage, attacking with everything left, trading blows that would have killed lesser fighters. The other hunters watched in silence, bound by some protocol Alex didn't understand. One-on-one challenge, sacred combat, whatever it was, it meant they'd fight this clean, or mostly clean. The alpha grabbed Xandra by the throat and lifted her off the ground. His claws dug in, drawing blood that ran down his arm. "You've forgotten what we are," he growled. "Forgotten that mercy is death, that compassion is weakness, that the pack survives by being pure. The pack survives by adapting," Xandra choked out, "by changing, by—" He slammed her against the wall hard enough to crack stone. Once, twice. Her struggles weakened. Alex tried to stand. Failed. His body was done. Systems shutting down, running on fumes and stubbornness. But he could still move his arm, could still reach for the torch, still burning, still usable. He grabbed it and threw with everything left in his shoulder. The angle was bad, the trajectory worse, but sometimes physics has mercy for the desperate. The torch arced through the air, spinning, and caught the alpha directly in the face. Fire and flesh made acquaintance. The alpha screamed, dropping Xandra, clawing at his face. The smell of burned hair and skin filled the room. Xandra hit the ground, gasping. The alpha was between her and Kale, still dangerous despite the burns, turning toward her with rage in his eyes. She tried to stand, couldn't. Too much damage, too much blood loss. The alpha advanced, raising clawed hands for the killing blow. Alex watched it happening in slow motion. Watched Xandra reach for her son with one trembling hand. Watched Kale's face as he understood he was about to lose his mother. Watched the alpha's claws begin their descent. Something inside Alex snapped. Not broke, snapped into place. Some gear that had been stripped during the war, some part of himself he'd thought dead, suddenly catching and engaging. He didn't decide to move. He just moved. Launched himself forward despite the broken ribs, despite the blood loss, despite every rational reason to stay down. He hit the alpha low, shoulder to midsection, using techniques from a lifetime ago when he trained for combat that was personal and brutal. They went down together, rolling, and Alex got his hands around a piece of broken metal and swung it into the alpha's head. The blow stunned, didn't stop. The alpha backhanded him, and Alex felt teeth come loose. But he held on, kept fighting, because if he let go now, they were dead. All of them. The alpha got on top of him, claws finding his chest. Pain like fire, like acid, like every bad thing distilled into sensation. Alex screamed, and Xandra rose, bleeding, broken, moving on nothing but will and fury. She grabbed the alpha from behind, wrapped her arms around his throat, and pulled. Pulled with every muscle, every fiber, putting her entire body into the leverage. The alpha thrashed, trying to throw her off. His claws dug deeper into Alex's chest, and the world started going gray. Alex tried to hold on, to keep the alpha's attention divided, but his hands were slipping. Everything was slipping. Then Xandra bit down, not on the throat, the armor protected that, on the alpha's forearm where the bone plates didn't reach. Her teeth sank deep, tearing through muscle, severing tendons. The alpha's roar changed pitch, became something closer to a wail, but he didn't let go. Instead, he rolled, taking all three of them with him, smashing Xandra against the floor with his armored back. Alex heard something crack, heard her gasp, but her jaws stayed locked on the alpha's arm. The other hunters stirred, uncertain. This wasn't clean combat anymore. This was desperation and chaos, and three fighters who'd all gone past the point where survival instincts should have shut them down. The alpha finally tore his arm free, leaving chunks of flesh in Xandra's mouth. He staggered upright, breathing hard, blood pouring from a dozen wounds, but he was still standing, still dangerous. Still, a small figure darted from the corner. Kyle. The boy moved faster than Alex would have thought possible, grabbing a piece of sharp metal from the debris. He didn't hesitate, didn't slow down, just ran straight at the alpha and drove the makeshift blade into the gap where bone armor met leg. The alpha screamed, not in pain, in surprise, in outrage that prey had dared to fight back. He reached for the boy, and Xandra was there, moving on shredded muscles and broken bones, putting herself between the alpha and her son one more time. She didn't have weapons left, didn't have strength, but she had her body and she used it like a shield, taking the alpha's claws in her stomach, her chest, anywhere that wasn't Kale. Blood sprayed. Too much blood. The kind of blood loss that meant minutes, not hours. Alex saw it happening, saw Zandra's legs buckle, saw the alpha draw back for the finishing strike, saw Kale screaming his mother's name in a language Alex didn't speak but understood in his bones. No, he didn't have the breath for it, didn't have the voice, but somewhere in his chest, in whatever part of him was still functioning, the word resonated like a bell. No, not like this. Not now. Alex crawled. Couldn't walk, couldn't stand, but he could drag himself forward on broken ribs and punctured lungs. Could reach the torch where it had rolled into a corner, still burning, ember hot. Could wrap fingers around it despite the pain of blistered skin. Could stand, shouldn't be possible. Was possible anyway, because sometimes the body obeys when you give it orders in the right tone of command. When you make it understand that failure isn't an option because the alternative is watching a child lose his mother. Alex took 2 steps and drove the torch directly into the alpha's eye. The scream was inhuman, beyond inhuman. The alpha spun, clawing at his face, at the flame eating into his orbital socket, and his tail, Jesus, he had a tail, thick and armored, caught Alex across the midsection and sent him flying again. This time Alex didn't get up. Couldn't. Had used the last of everything just to make that strike count. But it was enough. Zandra, bleeding and broken, used the distraction to hook her claws into the alpha's throat from behind, found the gap in the armor she'd been looking for, and pulled. The sound was wet and final. The alpha made a choking noise, hands going to his throat, trying to stem the arterial spray. But Zandra had hit something critical, something that didn't heal fast enough to matter. He dropped to his knees, gold eyes wide with shock, and toppled forward. Silence crashed over the room like a physical weight. The other hunters stared at their alpha, dying on the floor, at Zandra barely standing, covered in blood that was hers and his and probably Alex's too, at Kyle clutching his piece of metal, still ready to fight despite being a child who shouldn't know how to kill, at Alex, sprawled against the wall, each breath a separate negotiation with damaged lungs. One of the hunters stepped forward, older, scarred, with gray threading through his midnight blue skin. He looked at the alpha's corpse, then at Sandra, then at Kale. His nostrils flared, drawing in the mixed scent. Contaminated, he said slowly, but alive. We're alive, Zandra agreed. Her voice was steady despite the shaking. We adapted. We survived. That's pack law too. The gray hunter considered this, looked at the others. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Subtle shifts in posture, angle of ears, things Alex couldn't read but could sense the weight of. The alpha's dead, the gray hunter said finally. His law died with him, but the scent remains. The boy, he paused. The boy is no longer pure pack. No, Sandra said. He's something new. New is dangerous. So is staying the same. Sandra gestured at the corpse. He would have killed my son for smelling wrong, for being saved by someone outside the pack. How is that strength? The gray hunter's expression was unreadable. It's survival. It's extinction. Zandra's claws retracted, hands becoming hands again. We're not the only species on this planet anymore. Humans are here. Others will come. If we can't adapt, can't learn to recognize allies instead of just prey and pack, we'll die. Maybe not today. Maybe not this generation. But eventually. She's right, another voice. Female, younger. I've seen the human settlements. They cooperate across species lines, share resources with beings who don't even smell like them. It makes them strong. It makes them weak, someone else argued. Soft, unable to hunt properly. Unable to hunt us, you mean? Zandra shot back. Because they don't see everything as prey. They build instead of just taking, create instead of just killing. And they survive in places we couldn't last a week. The argument rippled through the hunters, voices rising. Alex watched it happen, unable to follow the rapid-fire language shifts, but understanding the core of it. They were at a crossroads, evolution in real time, adapt or remain pure, survive or maintain identity. We adapt or we die, Zandra said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The hunters went quiet. She repeated it, slower. We adapt or we die. The gray hunter raised a hand, and the remaining murmurs fell away completely. The boy lives, he said, for now, but he cannot return to the clan. The scent, mixed or not, will trigger others. Will cause conflicts we cannot afford during hunting season. Where does he go? Zandra asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. That's your burden. The gray hunter looked at her with something that might have been pity. You stood against the alpha, killed him in challenge. By pack law, that makes you alpha now, but by choosing prey over pack, he paused. You've exiled yourself, both of you. Zandra's shoulders dropped, not surprise. Just confirmation of what she'd already accepted the moment she stepped between the alpha and her son. I understand, she said quietly. The gray hunter nodded. You have until dawn. After that, any clan member has the right to hunt you as rogues. He looked at Alex. The human too. He's marked with your blood now. The mixed scent makes him... A pause, searching for words. Confusing. Not quite prey. Not quite pack. Something in between. What does that make him? Alex managed to ask, each word costing blood. The gray hunter met his eyes. Problem. Solution. Depends who you ask. He turned back to Zandra. Go. Before the others decide, honor matters more than curiosity. The hunters filed out in silence, disappearing into the rain-soaked darkness. Within seconds, it was like they'd never been there. Just corpses and blood and the wreckage of combat. Zandra stood very still for a long moment. Then her legs gave out and she collapsed. Alex tried to move toward her. Failed. His body was done negotiating. Everything hurt in ways that suggested serious internal damage. The kind that needed actual medical attention, not field medicine and spite. Kale ran to his mother, small hands pressing against her wounds, trying to stop the bleeding through sheer force of will. He was crying now, great heaving sobs that shook his small frame, and making sounds in his throat that transcended language, the universal grammar of a child watching their parent die. Zandra's hand came up, cupping his face with blood-slick fingers. Shh, it's okay. You're safe now. You're bleeding, Kale managed in standard dialect, words slurred but understandable. I know. Zandra smiled, and even through the pain, it was genuine. I know, little one, but you're safe. That's what matters. Alex finally got his body to cooperate enough to crawl across the floor. It took an eternity. Every movement was agony, ribs grinding, lungs struggling. But he made it, collapsing next to them in a heap of damaged meat and stubbornness. Field kit, he gasped, in my jacket. Left pocket. Kale dove for it, small hands retrieving the battered medical kit Alex always carried. Habit from the war, from too many times when preparation was the difference between bleeding out and making it home. The kid brought it back, and Alex's shaking fingers found the trauma seal patches. Press here, he told Kyle, positioning the boy's hands over the worst of Zandra's wounds. Hard as you can. Don't let up. While Kale applied pressure, Alex fumbled with the patches, peeling them open and slapping them over the injuries that looked most immediately fatal. The patches weren't designed for Zandra's physiology, but blood was blood and pressure was pressure, and sometimes that was enough. Zandra's eyes tracked his movements, consciousness flickering but present. You should go, she said. Leave us. You've done enough. Shut up and let me work. You're in worse shape than I am. Then we're both idiots. Alex got another patch in place. Kale, I need you to hold this one. Gentle but firm. Can you do that? The boy nodded, gold eyes still streaming tears, but his hands were steady. Good kid, brave kid. The kind who'd charge an alpha with nothing but sharp metal and rage. Alex kept working, using the entire field kit. Patches, coagulant powder, everything. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. But it bought them time. And sometimes time was the most valuable resource in the universe. When the kit was empty, Alex sat back and took inventory. Zandra was stabilized, barely, but she'd need real medical attention within hours or infection would finish what the alpha started. His own injuries were extensive. Broken ribs, punctured lung, deep lacerations, possible internal bleeding. Standard Tuesday for someone stupid enough to fight predators barehanded. Kyle was the only one relatively unharmed. Traumatized, definitely, but physically intact. We need to move, Alex said. They gave us until dawn. That's maybe 4 hours. I can't walk, Zandra admitted. Then I'll carry you. You can barely breathe. I've done harder shit. Alex looked around the ruined outpost, cataloging resources. Any settlements nearby, human or otherwise? Zandra's laugh came out as a wheeze. There's a research station, 2 days north, but we won't make it. Not like this. Then we make it anyway. Alex started dragging himself upright, using the wall for support. Every muscle screamed protest. He ignored them. Because the alternative is dying here. And I'm not doing that twice in one day. Twice? I died when that alpha had his claws in my chest. This is bonus time. Alex offered his hand. Come on. We don't have the luxury of giving up. Zandra stared at his hand like it was a foreign object. Then slowly she reached up and took it. Together, more falling than standing. They got her upright. She swayed, leaning heavily against him, and Alex felt his ribs protest the added weight. He didn't care. They'd hold or they wouldn't, and either way, he was walking. Kel picked up a pack from the corner, probably Zandra's, from before everything went sideways, and slung it over his small shoulders. Ready to move. Ready to survive. They stumbled out into the rain. The storm had lessened to a steady drizzle, cold and miserable. The bodies of the hunters they'd killed lay where they'd fallen, already being reclaimed by Adara's aggressive ecosystem. Insects and fungus and things that moved in the spaces between classification. Alex picked a direction that seemed less vertical than the others and started walking. Zandra on one side, Kyle on the other, all three of them moving like a single damaged organism. Every step was negotiation. Every breath was pain. But they moved. The forest swallowed them slowly, fog rolling back in, turning the world into gray cotton and shadow. Behind them, the outpost disappeared, swallowed by the rain and the dark. Ahead, nothing certain, just movement, just the next step, and then the next. They walked for hours. Alex lost track of time somewhere around when his vision started tunneling, and his sense of up and down became more suggestion than fact. But Kale kept them on course. The kid had some kind of natural navigation, reading the landscape in ways Alex couldn't begin to understand. Zandra faded in and out of consciousness, dead weight that Alex dragged forward through sheer bloody-minded refusal to stop. When she was awake, she gave directions. When she wasn't, Kale compensated. They passed through territory that wanted to kill them. Plants with thorns that dripped neurotoxin, insects the size of fists that screamed when disturbed, things that moved in the peripheral vision and vanished when looked at directly. Twice they heard howls in the distance. Pack hunters maybe, or just Adara's native predators taking advantage of the storm. Either way, they kept moving. At some point, Alex realized he was talking. Rambling. Words spilling out in a constant stream, because if he stopped talking, he'd stop moving. And if he stopped moving, he'd die. Used to know this guy, Torres, crazy bastard, took a plasma round to the liver and walked 15 clicks to extraction. Medics couldn't believe it. Asked him how he stayed conscious, and you know what he said? He said he kept betting himself he could make it to the next tree. Just the next tree, and then the next one. Didn't think about the whole distance, just one tree at a time. Smart guy. Died 6 months later in a bar fight. Stupid way to go after surviving. Alex, Zandra's voice barely audible. After surviving so much combat, and I always thought that was the real... Alex, stop. He stopped, swaying, confused. What? Look. He looked. Lights in the distance. Electric lights, not bioluminescent. Square shapes that meant buildings. The research station, they'd made it. Alex tried to laugh and ended up coughing blood instead. Told you, he managed. Told you we'd... His legs gave out. He went down hard, Zandra collapsing with him, both of them hitting the mud in a tangle of limbs and pain. Kyle was screaming something, running toward the lights. Alex watched the kid disappear into the fog and hoped he'd make it. Hoped someone would listen. Hoped everything went black. Consciousness returned in pieces. Sensation first, soft surface beneath him. Medical smell, antiseptic and recycled air. Pain, but distant, chemical dampened. Sound, steady beeping. Voices, low and concerned. Footsteps on metal deck plates. Light, too bright. He turned his head away from it. Easy, a voice said. Human, Female. Professional. You're in the med bay. You've been unconscious for 36 hours. Alex's mouth was dry. He tried to speak, managed a croak. Water, the voice said, and something pressed against his lips. He drank. It tasted like plastic and salvation. Xandra, he managed. The boy. Are they alive? Stable. The Viltari female has extensive injuries, but she's responding to treatment. The child is unharmed. Well, physically unharmed. Psychologically, a pause. That's going to take time. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by confusion. Viltari? That's what her species is called. You didn't know? The voice sounded amused. You fought an entire clan of apex predators to protect someone whose species name you didn't even know? Didn't come up in conversation. I suppose it wouldn't. The doctor, Alex could see her now, middle-aged, efficient-looking, made notes on a datapad. You've got 3 cracked ribs, a punctured lung that we've patched, multiple lacerations requiring regenerative treatment, and more soft tissue damage than I've seen outside of combat zones. What the hell happened out there? Helped a kid who needed help. That kid's mother killed an alpha in single combat. Do you understand what that means? Alex didn't. Shook his head. The doctor's expression was complicated. Alphas don't lose fights. They're genetically superior, combat trained from birth, armored by nature. And she killed one while protecting both you and her son. She paused. The Viltari clans have protocols for this situation, but they're complicated. You might want to talk to her when she wakes up. Is she awake now? Has been for about 6 hours. Refused to sleep until she knew you were alive. The doctor's expression softened slightly. She's in the next room. I'll send someone to help you walk. I can walk. You absolutely cannot. Watch me. Alex sat up. The room spun. He ignored it, swinging his legs off the med bed and testing their weight-bearing capacity. Pain shot through his torso, but everything held. More or less. The doctor sighed. You're an idiot. Yeah, add it to the list. She helped him anyway, supporting his weight as they shuffled to the next room, through the door, into a space that looked identical to his. White walls, medical equipment, the universal aesthetic of facilities designed for function over comfort. Xandra lay in the bed, propped up on pillows. Someone had cleaned the blood off and dressed her wounds, leaving her looking less like a warrior and more like someone recovering from surgery, which she was technically. Cal sat in a chair beside her, holding her hand. When he saw Alex, the boy's face lit up. Pure joy, no complications, and he launched himself across the room for a hug that Alex's ribs immediately regretted. Careful, Xandra said, voice rough but amused. You'll kill him after he survived everything else. Worth it, Alex wheezed, carefully extracting himself from Cale's grip. He lowered himself into the chair the boy had vacated, every movement calculated to minimize agony. You look like hell. You look worse. Xandra's eyes tracked over him, cataloging damage with professional assessment. How much of you still works? Most of the important bits. How about you? I'll heal. Viltari physiology is resilient. She paused. The doctors tell me you carried me for kilometers while suffering from a punctured lung. Might have been kilometers, might have been meters. All looked the same in the fog. You should have left me. Thought we covered this already. I'm bad at following sensible advice. Xandra's laugh came out as a cough. Apparently. They sat in silence for a moment. Cale climbed back into his mother's lap, careful of her injuries, and she wrapped an arm around him automatically. Protection even in rest. What happens now? Alex asked. Xandra's expression darkened. Now, we're exiles. Cale and I can't return to clan territory. The mixed scent marks us as compromised. Not quite prey, not quite pack, but too confusing for instinct to process cleanly. They'll leave us alone, but we're not welcome. So you start over. Start over, she repeated, testing the words. Yes, I suppose that's what it's called. She looked at him. What about you? You're marked with my blood, covered in my scent. When you go back to human settlements, they'll smell it. Won't understand it, but they'll know you've been, she searched for words, intimate with a Viltari. Alex shrugged. Let them know. I'm not ashamed of what happened. You should be. You nearly died. Did die briefly, according to the medics. Your heart stopped twice during treatment. And yet, Alex spread his hands. Still here, still breathing. Bonus time, like I said. Zandra studied him for a long moment, gold eyes unreadable. Then, why did you do it? Really? You could have walked away after delivering Kale to me, could have run when the clan arrived, could have let me handle the Alpha alone, but you stayed. You fought. You nearly bled out on my account. She leaned forward slightly. Why? Alex thought about it, about all the times he'd followed orders instead of conscience, about the faces that haunted him at 0300, about retirement that felt more like dying by inches than living at all. Because I was tired of walking past people who needed help, he said finally. Because every time I close my eyes, I see all the times I chose wrong. And I'm done with that. Done being the person who looks away. He met her eyes. You asked me that in the outpost, remember? Right before everything went to hell. I remember. Well, same answer now as then. Except, he paused, except now I've got proof it was the right call. You're alive. Cal's alive. I'm alive. That's about as close to a happy ending as situations like that get. This isn't an ending, Zandra said quietly. It's a complication. What do you mean? She looked at her arm, at the bandages covering where she'd bled during the fight. I bit you during the battle, mixed my blood with yours intentionally, fed on you in front of the pack. I remember, you said it was to confuse the scent, to make them hesitate. That's part of it. Zandra's expression was complicated, embarrassment mixed with something else. But in Viltari culture, feeding from another being, especially during combat, especially in defense of young, she struggled. It's a bonding ritual, a claim. It tells the pack that you're mine, under my protection, part of my, she stopped. Part of your what? My mate circle, Zandra finished, voice barely audible. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex processed that. Mate circle, which presumably meant, you're saying we're married? Not exactly. It's more complicated than, yes, essentially. By Viltari law, I claimed you, publicly, in front of witnesses. The pack saw it, accepted it. That's why they let us go. Exiles, yes, but bonded exiles, a unit, a new pack of 3. Alex looked at Kale. The kid was watching him with those gold eyes, expression unreadable. Probably didn't understand half of what was being said, but kids always understood the important parts. The emotional weight, if not the specific words. So what you're saying, Alex said slowly, is that in addition to nearly dying, getting exiled from your clan, and permanently altering my scent profile, I also accidentally got married. Yes. To someone I've known for less than a day. Yes. Who tried to kill me. Briefly. I was fighting instinct, not yes. Briefly. Zandra's expression was defensive. If you want to dispute it, there are protocols. It would require... I'm not disputing it. She stopped, stared. What? I'm not disputing it, Alex repeated. Honestly, it's the sanest thing that's happened in the last 24 hours. Everything else has been completely insane. So why not throw in an accidental marriage? You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Alex leaned back, ignoring the protest from his ribs. Look, I came to Adara to disappear, to run away from everything I'd done and been. Thought I'd just fade out quietly, die alone and unmourned in some forgotten corner of space. He gestured at the med bay. Instead, I found a kid who needed help. Met a woman who fought her entire biology to protect her son. Nearly died doing something that actually mattered for the first time in years. And apparently got married in the process. He shrugged. Could be worse. Zandra's expression went through several rapid changes. Disbelief, calculation, something that might have been hope. You understand what this means? Mate circles are permanent, bonded for life. You'd be responsible for Kale, for me, for a family, Alex finished. Yeah, I get it. And you're okay with that? Am I okay with suddenly having people who depend on me? With being part of something larger than myself? With having a reason to wake up at 300 that isn't nightmares? Alex looked at Kale, then at Zandra. Yeah, I think I am. Zandra's eyes were bright. Not tears. Viltari didn't cry, apparently. But something close. You're insane. So I've been told. Kyle, who'd been listening quietly, suddenly climbed into Alex's lap, careful of the injuries but determined. The boy's weight was warm and real, his small hands clutching Alex's shirt. Within seconds, exhausted by everything, Kale's breathing evened out into sleep. Alex looked down at the kid, then at Xandra. Her expression had softened completely, watching her son sleep against the human who'd nearly died for them. "See?" Alex said quietly. "Family. You should rest. I've been resting for 36 hours. Any more rest and I'll fossilize." He offered his hand. "Come on, mate of mine. Let's figure out what happens next." Xandra took his hand, careful of her own injuries, and let him help her up. Kyle attached himself to her other side, and the three of them moved toward the door in a slow shuffle that was equal parts recovery and deliberate. The doctor they passed in the hallway took one look at them and sighed. "You're all supposed to be in bed." "Yeah, well," Alex said, "we're bad at following medical advice." Apparently, but she didn't stop them, just shook her head and made notes on her data pad. They made it to the cafeteria. Small space, maybe 20 people, all researchers and support staff who stared openly at the Viltari and the human who smelled like her. Alex ignored them, focusing on getting food and finding a table in the corner. Kyle ate like someone who'd been starving, which he probably had been. Xandra picked at her meal, still recovering, but forced down enough to satisfy basic nutritional needs. Alex managed 3 bites before his stomach informed him that solid food was still negotiable. "What's the plan?" Xandra asked after a while. "Long term." "Don't know," Alex admitted. "Figure it out as we go, but..." He looked at her. "We figure it out together. The 3 of us. New pack, right?" "New pack," Xandra agreed. She reached across the table, palm up. Alex looked at her hand, at the scars already forming from the fight, at the claws that had retracted but could extend in a heartbeat, at the midnight blue skin that marked her as predator, as alien, as other. He took it. Their blood had mixed once already, in combat, in desperation, in the moment when biology and choice collided. Now it mixed again, metaphorically, in the simple act of holding hands across a cafeteria table while a small boy ate his first meal in safety. Kyle looked up, gold eyes moving between them. He didn't speak, still processing everything probably, but his small hand reached out and covered both of theirs. 3 hands, 3 lives, 3 beings who'd stumbled into something resembling family through the worst circumstances imaginable. It wasn't perfect, wasn't planned, wasn't anything Alex could have predicted when he woke up that morning thinking he'd spend another day disappearing into Adara's wilderness. But it was real, and it was his. Outside the research station, rain continued to fall on black cliffs. The forest hunted and was hunted. The clans moved through territory that had been theirs for 10,000 years, following instincts carved into DNA by evolution's patient hand. And somewhere in that wilderness, 3 sets of footprints remained, marks in the mud that rain would eventually erase, but that had existed. Evidence that prey and predator, human and Viltari, soldier and hunter, had walked together and survived. Tomorrow would bring complications. Questions about their status, logistics of building a life as exiles, the constant challenge of managing Xandra's instincts and Kale's trauma, and Alex's own damage. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight they had food and shelter in each other. Tonight they were alive. Xandra squeezed his hand, claws pricking his skin gently. Not drawing blood, just making contact. "You marked him as prey," she said, echoing words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "And you marked me as your mate," Alex finished. She smiled, all teeth, predator sharp but genuine. "Yes, I did." Kel made a sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a sob, might have been both. He leaned against his mother's side, small and exhausted and safe. They sat like that for a long time, while the station hummed around them and the rain fell outside and the universe continued its patient work of taking broken things and making them into something new. Finally, Alex spoke. "So, mate circles, how does that work exactly?" "You're asking now?" Xandra's expression was amused. "After agreeing to it? Seemed like the right move at the time. Details can wait. Details always matter." "Then tell me." "We've got time." Xandra considered for a moment, then started explaining. The customs and protocols, the expectations and responsibilities, the way Viltari bonds worked when biology and choice aligned. Alex listened, asking questions when things didn't make sense, clarifying when her human vocabulary failed. Kyle fell asleep against her side, exhausted by everything. They didn't move, didn't want to wake him, just kept talking in low voices while the boy slept, and the station maintained its vigil against the wilderness, and the future waited patiently for them to arrive. Hours later, when exhaustion finally won and they had to return to the medbay, Alex helped Zandra stand. Kyle woke enough to walk, stumbling and sleepy, held between them like the bridge he'd become. They made it back to their rooms, separate beds technically, but Kyle refused to leave his mother's side and Zandra refused to let him go, so they ended up in a pile, the boy in the middle, Zandra on one side, Alex on the other. The medbay staff didn't comment. Maybe they understood. Maybe they just didn't care. Either way, they let it happen. Alex lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to Kyle's steady breathing and Zandra's slower rhythm. His ribs hurt. His lung ached. Every part of him that had been clawed open protested movement. But he was alive. They were alive. And tomorrow they'd figure out what that meant. For now, for tonight, this was enough. Zandra's voice barely a whisper. Alex? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For being stupid enough to help. For being stubborn enough to stay. For being... She paused. For being you. Alex thought about that. About all the ways his choices had led here, to this moment, to this strange family formed in violence and blood and desperate hope. You're welcome, he said. Silence. Then, I mean it. I know this isn't normal, isn't what you planned. But it's better, Alex interrupted. Whatever I planned, this is better. He felt rather than saw her smile in the darkness. Minutes passed. Sleep pulled at him, chemical-aided and irresistible. But before it took him completely, he spoke one more time. Hey, Zandra? What does it mean, what you said at the end? In your language. A pause, then, pray no longer. Alex smiled. Yeah, that sounds about right. Through the window, the first true light of dawn broke across Adara's black cliffs, gold and fierce, cutting through the last of the fog. The light touched Zandra's face first, illuminating the midnight blue skin, the sharp lines of her features, the gold flecks in her eyes that caught and held the sunrise. Then it found Alex, warming skin that had been cold for too long, and finally Kale between them, safe and sleeping. 3 faces in the light, 3 survivors, 3 beings who were no longer what they'd been. Alex closed his eyes and let sleep take him, knowing that morning would bring challenges and complications and 100 things that needed solving. But tonight, they were alive. Tonight, they were together. Tonight, they were no longer prey. And that was enough.